achieved.
It would appear that there is another crack in the UFC juggernaut. Rory MacDonald, the currently top-rated active welterweight in Canada, former title challenger, multi-time title challenger, has signed with Bellator MMA. We're all well aware of this at this point in time. And a lot of people say, yeah, but he's one fighter. Well, yeah, so is Benson Henderson, so is Josh Thompson, so is Phil Davis, so is Matt Mitrione. We are seeing a trend. And I'm not talking about fighters who struggle. I like Melvin Gillard, for example, struggles in the UFC, goes to World Series of Fighting, doesn't, hold his own, again, winds up in Bellator just because that's what they signed him because he's a name. I'm talking about guys who fight their contract out, have had success, maybe win their final couple fights, maybe lose a couple in there, but still are very good fighters, and they opt to go to Bellator. And the UFC likes to frame it as, we're no longer in the Rory MacDonald business, we're no longer in the Benson Henderson business. Well, the fact of the matter is these are still talented fighters, and what we are seeing now is these fighters are sending a message to the rest of the fighting world, there are alternatives. And suddenly you're looking at an organization that has a fighter in their welterweight division that has soundly defeated the current UFC welterweight champion Tyron Woodley. And I think Rory MacDonald would do it again. Styles make matchups. I think he would beat Woodley in a rematch. And now he could very well be on his way to becoming the welterweight champion in Bellator. At the same time, we've also seen UFC fighters like Benson Henderson coming off a very poor performance have gone to Bellator, and I'm not saying, they just haven't done quite as well as we'd expect them to do. And it's very interesting to see how it all plays out. I talked about this before, but the cracks are starting to show up, and suddenly two or three fighters per division are starting to jump ship. Could you imagine, because the rumor was talking a massive deal was offered to Donald Cerrone before he re-signed with the UFC, could you imagine if Bellator had rolled out a three-headed monster of saying, we just signed Rory MacDonald, Donald Cerrone, and Lorenz Larkin, who's also coming off a big win as a free agent. We had signed all three of those fighters, and suddenly you had, Rory could go, as he said, middleweight and welterweight. Cerrone could go welterweight and lightweight. Larkin could go welterweight and potentially middleweight again. And suddenly it's just another big move for Bellator. We'll have to see how this plays out. Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. As always, I am your host, Scott Johnson. And on this episode of the show, we're breaking down the ultimate UFC Fight Night 93, which will take place in Hamburg, Germany on September 3rd. Where I am, it will be a 3 p.m. start Eastern Standard Time, which I'm looking forward to. Nice afternoon event. There'll be 4 main card fights. I'll be giving you all those predictions on this episode of the show. All of my preliminary bouts, and I believe there are 8 preliminary fights. A lot of new guys and a couple new ladies fighting in this card that I'll be breaking down for you at kamikazeoverdrive.net. Now, as far as the bet packs are concerned, I am dismayed that they did not produce a winner at the last event, and I felt we were robbed. I felt Joe Lozon defeated Jim Miller, and that was the only difference between a winning gold parlay, which paid 90 units based on the way I lay out my betting units, because I had Paige Van Zant, Sam Alvey by knockout, and Alessio Di Chirico to win, along with Joe Lozon. And I thought Miller took the first round. I thought Miller started strong in round 2, but I thought Lozon really took over with his grappling, was landing decent strikes, but was getting the better of the grappling, and Miller was fading. I thought Lozon clearly took rounds 2 and 3. Obviously, it's not a robbery, and there's not a lot of there's dispute back and forth. You see good arguments for both sides, but because I felt very slighted by the decision there. I already chalked it up to a win, and then as soon as I heard it was going to a split decision, I immediately took the win off the board because I knew it was going to be a loss. I lost a lot of money on that one. I'm sure a lot of you did as well. So what I'm going to do, I lost a lot of cash. I'm going to give it a little bit back. It's not much. I'm going to knock the bet packs down for this show. $10 for the bet pack for UFC Fight Night 93. If you're interested in getting in on it, there's going to be a lot of potential, because when you have a lot of new fighters debuting and a lot of fighters we don't know a lot about, especially the bookies, they do their research too, but it gives us a chance to make some cash on fighters that we know have a little less information on, haven't seen in the spotlight just yet. That's a lot for me. We have 4 predictions we need to get to, so let's break the first fight down. The 4-fight main card opens up in the UFC's lightweight division as certainly German home crowd favorite Sergeant Nick Hein, 13-2-0 with 1 no contest, takes on South Korea's supernatural Hyun Bong with a current record of 18 wins and 9 losses. Now for Hein, he's coming off back-to-back wins. He's 3-1 inside the octagon. For Bong, 2-2 overall. He's alternated wins and losses over his last 8 fights dating to time outside of the UFC. Now, the German fighter has been out of action for 11 months. He comes in with a 1-1 record of fights ended by knockout. He has 4 submission wins, has never been submitted, 8-1 on the scorecards. He's a BJJ purple belt and a judo black belt. Conversely, Bong, 9 wins by knockout. The guy's got face-melting power, never been knocked out, but he does have 3 submission losses on his record. He's never tapped out anyone. 9-6 on the scorecards. The South Korean will be the bigger man, 3 inches taller, 5-inch reach advantage. Hein is 1 year younger. Hein, I shouldn't say the bigger man, he's the longer, taller man. Hein is a physical monster, though, for his size nonetheless. Bong, big, as I said, big knockout power. He deploys that power in wide-ranging hooks. Not a lot of setup, especially when he starts to get tired. We saw him drop Leo Kuntz with a left hook. He destroyed Cajun Johnson in a fight he was probably behind on the scorecards. All he was doing was landing the big shots there and eventually put Cajun down for good. He will throw a left jab and come with the right hook behind it. His hands tend to be very low when he's attacking, which allows him to punch from odd angles, which can be difficult to defend against because it is so unorthodox. He has a good chin, certainly not perfect, but he's capable of taking a strike, and he will take a strike to eat one. And he'll switch stances. For a guy who's not overly technical with his strikes, he will switch stances periodically. His legs, his kicks, not a big part of his attack. He will throw some decent inside leg kicks. Will look for knees in close, but that's what he wants. He wants his opponent to close the distance and trade. He's also capable of sitting back and countering, but at times he can be too passive. We saw that against Mirbek Taisumov in his debut, where Bong just sat back and Taisumov picked him apart and really couldn't find his rhythm, couldn't find his openings to attack, and never caught up and lost a decision there. Now, as I said, his chin is good. It's not perfect. John Tuck was able to drop him. Bong was getting very sloppy in the exchange against Leo Kuntz and got behind at times. As he slows down, his hands get lower. He becomes more predictable, easier to counter-strike. And very sloppy, open defensively. And his cardio, because, if he goes for things and tries to finish opponents and he can't, his cardio is not that great. On the mat, he will go for submissions, even though he has no submissions as a pro. He tried for a guillotine against Leo Kuntz. He will attack takedowns he will attack the neck on takedown attempts. But the situation is there, if he does that and doesn't get it, he's going to wind up on his back, which is not a good position for him, as opposed to just maybe defending and trying to get out as quickly as possible. Overall, his defensive wrestling very poor. 12 takedowns against. Those are actually transpired over 3 fights, with one of his fights didn't require a takedown attempt. John Tuck took him down with relative ease and eventually submitted him after hurting him. Now, you look at Hein. Hein is a power puncher. Short hooks, will throw a jab. Left hook is his primary weapon. He's improving his technical striking. He's not just going to sit there and wing kind of Sean Shirk-ish combinations that are almost short-armed. He is a southpaw. He'll paw with that right hand, throw that straight left. I said he likes that right hook. He'll go to the body as well. Some hard inside low kicks. He would benefit tremendously from throwing more of those low kicks. They can be very devastating, take away his opponent's mobility, but he needs to throw more. He can counter-strike as well. He will use that left hand to try and catch his opponent when they come in, or just throw flurries as they move in and to attack him. A lot of lateral movement. He's really picked that up late. He will attack, move away. He's more patient. His opponent, his last couple of opponents have had more success when they open up and really just throw everything at him. But if Sergeant Nick Hein, I keep calling Sergeant Nick Hein, but if Nick Hein can set the pace and be comfortable working at the pace he wants to work at, he's very difficult to deal with. As far as his takedowns, he comes from that judo base. He does a nice job of setting up his takedowns. He will strike, close the distance, another clinch, or shoot. He landed 2 against Dober, 1 against Sajewski, and another one of his more recent fights. And, he's very difficult to fend off. Defensively, good sprawl. He'll catch kicks for takedowns as well. One of his last fights, he was put on his back and immediately swept the top position, which shows he's capable. He's not one of these guys who can only be in top position and be dangerous. The big thing in this fight, his judo base is going to allow him to dictate where the fight takes place. He'll be able to defend takedowns if Bong looks for that, which I don't expect him to. And he should be able to score takedowns at will if he opts for that route. I would think Hein would be best served to use that judo background, exploit the poor takedown defense of his opponent, and take the power punching factor out of this fight. For Bong, he needs to drag Hein in close, get him into a brawl. Hein is a power puncher as well, but he has that shorter reach, and his opponent and Bong should be able to exploit that when they're exchanging. I like the way Hein has shown signs of mixing up his offense more, using different weapons. He does need to use more kicks, but he'll work those body shots, counter, throw combinations. Bong's inactivity at times will allow Hein to outpoint him during exchanges, and everyone has looked to take Bong down. I would be shocked if Nick Hein doesn't try to take him down. Additionally, the cardio factor should be, the advantage should be towards the German fighter here, and I think Hein can capitalize on making him swing and miss and being very elusive. The low hands of Bong means he's going to get cracked with some big shots. Hein has some power in his hand, but overall, Nick Hein needs to be very careful of the power of his opponent. I've said this multiple times, it's something to be very concerned with, but be elusive, use a lot of grappling, takedowns, counter-strike. My prediction is Nick Hein to defeat Tai Hungbong by decision. Fight number 2 in the main card takes place in the UFC's light heavyweight division as the 4th-ranked Ryan Darth Bader, 21-5-0, takes on the 12th-ranked, the Sledgehammer Ilir Latifi of Sweden with a current record of 13 wins, 4 losses, and 1 no contest. Now, this is a big opportunity for Latifi, and he has gone through a nice escalation of opponents lately. I always talk about this, but you can really see when the UFC is doing a good job of bringing fighters along. You know, Hans Stringer, Deshaun O'Connell, DeGian Vellante, and now taking on Bader. Bader's a big step up in competition, but he certainly has worked his way to that point. Keep in mind, Latifi trains with Alexander Gustafsson, who's also been prepping for this card too, so they should be peaking at the same time and really coming together nicely that way. And for these heavier fighters, these bigger men, it can be hard to find training partners, high-caliber training partners, and that's an advantage Latifi certainly has. For Ryan Bader, he comes in, he had his 5-fight winning streak snapped in his last fight where he was knocked out by Rumble Johnson, which, hey, he knocks out everybody pretty much unless you're Daniel Cormier, or I guess Phil Davis. But, you know, Ryan Bader, he had big wins over Phil Davis, Ovince St. Preux, and Rashad Evans all in that streak. But you keep in mind that knockout loss brings some realities back for Bader. 3 losses by knockout in his career. Also 2 submission losses recorded as well. All 5 of his defeats have come by stoppage. Physically, Bader, 6'2". He is 3 inches taller than his opponent. He'll have a 1-inch reach advantage. They are the same age. Latifi is a hulking monster of a man, though, physically. Bader, a slight edge in quantity of opposition, but certainly a bigger edge in quality of opposition. The big numbers that stand out to me, I already mentioned the finishes for Bader. He is 10-0, though, when he goes to the scorecards, which is darn impressive. 6 wins by knockout overall, as well as the Bader has some pop. I think the last one came in 2011, so it's not like he's been knocking guys out recently. For Latifi, 3-2 in the scorecards, 5-2 in fights ended by knockout. One of those knockouts coming recently against Jan Blachowicz with a vicious body kick. The guy has big-time power himself, though. Additionally, Latifi is 7-1 in fights that are less than 5 minutes long, so he very capable of stopping guys. After that, though, 4-3 outside of the opening round. But he is coming off a decision win over Gian Vellante, the first decision win since 2012, which came in his last pre-UFC fight. He is a very methodical striker, stiff leg kicks, hard hooks, short combinations. He will throw a nice right jab and fire a straight left. And he's got power in everything he throws. When he knocked out Chris Dempsey, which, you know, isn't a huge feat because we know how easily Dempsey goes down. He took him with the right hand. Same thing with Sean O'Connell. He put O'Connell on with the right hand. And O'Connell's got a lot of knockouts in his record as well, but he's not an easy guy to put away. We've seen that recently. He also KO'd Hans Stringer with a brutal straight right, which acted as a nice counter to a low kick early in that fight. And we saw something similar against Gian Vellante. The fight, of course, I said went to decision. But against Vellante, Ilir was really reaching for Vellante's kicks, which could get him in trouble, but ultimately he was able to catch one, slow Gian up just enough, and then slam a right home that really, hurt him early on in that fight. Another thing with Latifi, he has very fast hands for a big man, which catches a lot of people off guard. He'll also attack to the body. He'll work an uppercut in close and does a nice job of once he clinches up and closes that distance. If he's going to disengage, he will attack on the break. Additionally, I like the way he sets up his wrestling with his striking. He will punch and shoot, trying to drive his opponent into the cage if he can initially put them down. He had a nice single leg takedown versus Vellante, and he landed a beautiful belly-to-back suplex. A man of his lower stature who can get below his opponent's hips and generate that much power is going to have a lot of success putting guys down with those techniques. Now, he did spend some time at AKA training with Daniel Cormier, who's the light heavyweight champion. He's a monster of a man himself, and Cormier said he was by far the strongest man he had ever locked up with and trained, which that says a lot. Now, Ryan Bader. He has shown a lot of improvements dating back to the Glover Teixeira fight where he got knocked out, but as I said, that Rumble Johnson loss really brought back some of his shortcomings, screaming back to the forefront. What Bader does well, he has a very hard right hand, he pumps that left jab, he'll throw that right hook to follow it up, he'll counter with the right hook as well. He's shown a much improved kicking game, switch kicks to the body, he'll throw a lot of low kicks, he'll go high as well, but not quite as frequently. He uses a lot more movement in his attack, a lot of lateral movement. He does a lot of resetting where he'll attack and then boom, you see him just kind of shut things down, reset, and then re-engage his opponent. Pumping that jab constantly as he moves away is one of the keys to his offense, or I guess his defense. He does throw a lot of single strikes, and he does tend to lunge in a little bit and become a little bit, overextended when he's engaging. We saw him use a lot of movement against Phil Davis, and he had a lot of success stuffing Davis's takedown attempts in that decision when it was an upset there. Showed a good sprawl, was able to get up quickly whenever anybody does take him down, and that'll be a key in this fight. Now, the big thing with Bader is he tries to remain elusive, but at the same time, that really can inhibit the effectiveness of his striking. If he's trying to remain elusive and strong defensively, sometimes his offense tends to peter out a little bit. Additionally, when Bader does move forward, he tends to come forward with his head up and his chin exposed a little bit, and he'll lean in when he's throwing punches. Additionally, he's also at a very narrow and upright stance, which again leaves that chin pronounced and up there for his opponents to come over, especially when you're talking about a shorter statured man like Latifi going to try and throw over the top. Also could leave him open for takedowns as his opponent's able to get in on his hips and drive forward and catch him because he is so upright. Going back to the overhand right and the upright stance, both Phil Davis and Rashad Evans had success with that right hand, cracking Bader a couple of times. Additionally, Evans had a lot of success backing up Ryan whenever he committed on strikes and was pushing forward, and that forced Bader to at times run away, and it wasn't like he was evading, he was just on the defensive and not doing much. Bader does like to go for the guillotine, but it can result in him winding up on bottom. He was taken down by Glover Teixeira. Again, he shot for a takedown against Rumble Johnson. That did not work out and got him pounded out, and those are some things against a guy like Latifi he'll have to watch for. To win this fight, Bader needs to remain elusive, but at the same time, he has to be active. Push Latifi, not get caught with strikes. Can he land takedowns? Is that something he'll have available to him? It's going to be very difficult against a guy like Latifi. And for Ilir Latifi, he has big power, but he can't rely on that single shot. His activity rate is not great, but he knows now he can go full 3 rounds and win a fight. He needs to move in, cut that cage off, and really let his hands go in close, throw that heat, and really back Bader off. I think Ryan Bader's going to be backed off with Latifi's power. I think he's going to hesitate as a result. He's not going to commit on his strikes like he needs to. I think we're going to see Latifi have a lot of success cutting off the cage, backing Bader up towards the back wall. And with Bader not being able to land takedowns, that's going to take away one of his biggest weapons that he likes to rely on. I think Latifi could actually put some takedowns up of his own. I think both guys are going to slow down in this fight if it goes deeper. I don't know if it will go deeper. I think Latifi's going to find success closing that gap. He's going to catch or potentially counter the kicks that Bader likes to rely on. He's going to sling that overhand right. He's going to catch Bader coming in. And my prediction is Ilir Latifi to defeat Ryan Bader by knockout. In the co-main event of the evening, we remain in the UFC's light heavyweight division as the number 2 ranked Alexander the Mauler Gustafsson, 16-4-0 of Sweden. He returns to action, former multi-time title challenger, against Poland's Jan Blachowicz with a current record of 19 wins and 5 defeats. Now, Gustafsson, despite the fact he's ranked second in the division, is 1-3 in his last 4 fights, but he has fought the top 3 fighters in the division outside of himself, obviously, and 2 of those losses were title fights. There's a lot of questions. A lot of people thought he beat John Jones for the title. He pushed Daniel Cormier, probably had the best effort against anyone not to act other than John Jones against Daniel Cormier. He got smoked by Rumble Johnson. There's no two ways about that. There's the big factor here, the title fight letdown scenario for Gustafsson, not one but 2. He's coming off a title fight loss. He had the other one against John Jones. He needs this win very badly. He's already questioned his future in MMA, and if he loses this fight, it's really going to be a difficult scenario for him going forward if he goes forward at all. For Blachowicz, 2-2 in the UFC, uninspired losses against Jimmy Manuwa and Corey Anderson. He stopped Ilir Latifi with a body kick, and he had a scrappy decision win over Igor Prelims in his last fight. Both guys have a common opponent in the aforementioned Manuwa. Gus TKO'd him in 2014, or actually made a KO'd him. And for Jan Blachowicz, he lost the decision in 2015 to the Nigerian-born British fighter. Now for Gustafsson, 6'5", he is 3 inches taller than his opponent, 1 inch reach advantage. He is 4 years younger as well. Gus comes in 10 wins by knockout, 3-2 in the scorecards, which is a little shocking for a guy as capable as he is in long fights. Again, those 2 losses coming against Daniel Cormier and John Jones. 3-1 in fights ended by submission. For Blachowicz, 5-1 in fights ended by knockout, 7-1 in fights ended by submission, 7-3 on the scorecards. Looking at the Polish fighter first, he is a plodding striker. He's a very big man, even though Gus is taller. Blachowicz is still a very big man. He tends to be a bit of a plodding striker, can let his hands go if dragged into a brawl, but tends to be a little inactive at times. When he stopped Latifi, he landed an absolute monster of a body kick and swarmed him for the finish. But pretty much it was the only significant strike he threw for the entire fight. He really didn't throw a lot until he landed that strike. His tools in the tool bag, left jab, he'll throw some kicks, lots of single strikes, hard body kick as I just mentioned. He'll throw some swinging combinations. Against Prelims, he unloaded with some combinations when he got dragged into the brawl. Not overly technical, just kind of like, here we go, let's have at it and see what lands. He will mix in some big uppercuts and shots to the body, also knees in close when he gets in tight quarters. As I said, he didn't throw a lot against Latifi. He was getting backed up a lot in that fight. Jimmy Manuwa had a lot of success backing him up, and Jan Blachowicz was giving a lot of ground in those fights. He tried to grind Manuwa out in the cage, didn't really have the effect he was looking for. It did work better against Igor Prelims, where he was able to pin him on the wall and keep him there. Blachowicz has struggled at the same time with grappling. Corey Anderson really dominated him on the ground. I said Manuwa outmuscled him when they did go to the wall in a lot of those situations. And we've seen Blachowicz get pinned on the cage for prolonged periods of time, not working out of that position. Even, Prelims has some success. Blachowicz did land an early takedown against Igor and held top position, but eventually made a mistake and got put on back, which was, it's something he can't afford to do. Corey Anderson had a lot of success taking him down as well. We saw Blachowicz in a very grueling fight, tire in the third round. He was looking for takedowns and clinches, and not overly effective, and wouldn't have been that effective, but his opponent was equally, if not more, exhausted. Now, for Alexander Gustafsson, he is a very dangerous striker. Very long striker, which makes him dangerous. Nice combinations. He will work the head and the body. Throws that left jab. He will double and triple it up. Fires that right hand as well. Works in some uppercuts. He can cover a lot of distance with those uppercuts. Kicks and knees in close as well. Uses a lot of movement, bouncing around, cutting angles, disengages, circles away whenever close. He's not afraid to turn and run away from his opponent, which is kind of... It doesn't look good, but it creates that separation, allows him to then go back and attack after the fact. So it works for him. Doesn't look pretty, but it works for him. He's very good at fighting on the outside, moves in and out. I said lots of movement, slipped away from Manoa's kicks every time he tried to throw them, and really limits the amount of damage his opponent can pile up. He'll use that speed to avoid takedown scenarios. He will clinch against the cage very effectively. Now, keep in mind, he trains or has trained, spent a lot of time training with Phil Davis, and that should help him to shut down Blachowicz any attempt to, get on the inside and clinch or look for takedowns and try and just take away Gus's movement. The experience of that top-level competition that Alexander Gustafsson has added to his repertoire over the last little bit is certainly big. 5 competitive rounds with John Jones is nothing to sneeze at. 5 competitive rounds with Daniel Cormier is nothing to sneeze at. Maybe it shortened his physical prime by a little bit, but still it's good experience to have. A lot of pressure on the Swede coming into this. He needs a win. It's a step up. He's taking a step back in competition, so he's expected to do well like it was in the Jimmy Manoa fight. I think his speed and movement is going to keep Blachowicz from closing the gap and to set up his clinching or wrestling. I think Gus is capable of actually changing gears and shooting and scoring his own takedowns. That's certainly a possibility here. But overall, the volume and speed of Gustafsson will simply be too much here. Jan doesn't have the skill or output to match him in those scenarios. He needs to hurt him. He needs to probably knock him out. I don't think he's going to. I think Gus is just going to be too much for him to handle. My prediction is Alexander Gustafsson to defeat Jan Blachowicz by TKO. Finally, we move to the main event of the evening. We're in the UFC's heavyweight division as a pair of former heavyweight champions go head-to-head as the 6th-ranked Andrei the Pitbull Arlovski of Belarus with a current record of 25 wins, 12 losses, and 1 no contest, takes on the 9th-ranked Josh the War Master Barnett, hailing from the good old US of A, with a current record of 34 wins and 8 losses. Interesting to note, this fight would have been the semifinals of the Strikeforce Grand Prix, heavyweight Grand Prix back in the day, had Arlovski not got knocked out by Sergei Haritonov in the opening round. Obviously, Barnett went on to lose to Daniel Cormier in the finals. As I said, both guys are former UFC heavyweight champions. Both would be considered fringe heavyweight contenders at this point in their careers. Their chances are fading. Obviously, the winner of this fight gets a push back up. And with the division, 2 to 3 wins certainly puts them back in line for a shot at the title. Arlovski has lost 2 in a row coming to this after winning 6 consecutive fights, and he had an impressive 10-1 run with the only loss coming against Rumble Johnson. Barnett had won 8 consecutive fights before running into Cormier in that Strikeforce Grand Prix final. He's 3-2 since, and coming off a pretty tough loss against Ben Rothwell. Both fighters are 6'3", 1-inch reach advantage for the War Master. He should come in roughly 10 pounds heavier than Arlovski, but again, it can vary fight to fight. Andrei is 2 years younger. Barnett, this is the first time since 2013 that the former champ has fought twice in the same year. Keep that in mind. So his activity level, that could be a positive for Barnett. For Arlovski, overall, we know already, looking at the numbers first. For Arlovski, he has 9 losses by knockout, including the back-to-back ones he's coming into this fight off of against Overeem and Miocic. He gets knocked out by absolute monsters, but still 9 losses by knockout is huge. The guy's got 17 wins by knockout. That's darn impressive. 3-0 in fights ended by submission, and 5-3 on the scorecards. For Barnett, the guy's got 20 submission victories. That's a big total for a heavyweight. You don't see that very often. 8 wins by knockout. He has been finished in each of his last 2 defeats. Now, for Arlovski, he has made improvements in his striking defense to try and cut down on the scenarios in which he's going to get tagged with the big shots. But he has also had issues becoming too passive and not offering enough output in fights where he's trying to remain defensively sound. Really, outside of the Travis Browne victory, his other 3 UFC wins came when his opponent didn't push him, allowed him to kind of dictate the pace, or just really kind of dredge along and just got the better of it. He landed 39 strikes in his win over Frank Mir, which is kind of a back and forth, wasn't an overly exciting fight. It had its moments. 12 fights in the snoozer of his return against Brendan Schaub back in the day. What Arlovski does well, he throws a nice left jab. He'll paw with it constantly and then fires that power right. He'll also come with a left hook as well. Mixes him some quick uppercuts. He hurt Travis Browne with a back fist after missing a first strike. It was kind of like a, hey, let's throw this at him attempt. And he's effective when he throws a lot of different things over and at his opponent that they don't see coming. That counter uppercut he caught Browne on a level change with. He'll throw a nice step in left hook. And he has a nice short right cross counter that'll also catch an opponent with as they're rushing forward, which can be very effective. Kicking wise, some decent quick kick, low kicks. He can be very effective in close as well, using that dirty boxing, short elbows. But as he tires, and we saw this against Frank Mir, he becomes predictable. He constantly paws with that left hand and then fires the right hand, and he just does that over and over and over again. His opponent can pick up on that. That can be a big issue. Grappling-wise, good takedown defense. He was taken down once by Schaub, Mir, and Arlovski once. Not Arlovski, Overeem once each in those fights. He did have some issues with Frank Mir punching and then closing the gap, looking to clinch up with him. That's something he needs to avoid here in this fight. I said he gave up a single leg versus Frank Mir. He got stuck for a prolonged period of time on his back, and he really was slowing down from the impact of the grappling in that matchup. Now for Josh Barnett, he is well-known for being a catch wrestler, and a nasty one at that. He scores big slam takedowns. He's aggressive from top position. A lot of times he only needs one takedown to secure a fight-ending submission, but he has attempted a grand total of 2 takedowns over his last 4 fights and landed none of them. So really it's become kind of a non-factor in his arsenal. Now, obviously he's a good fighter from top position. We know what he's capable of. If he can't land takedowns, he's not useless by any stretch of the imagination. His clinch attack is his fallback. Look for him to jab his way into the clinch. He's very effective using that tie clinch. We saw him tie up Roy Nelson and land some knees in there. He'll work some uppercuts, elbows, body shots, force his opponent to constantly carry his weight. If they do break, he'll punch and attack on the break. He used a collar tie to control Frank Mir from in close and eventually stopped him. I believe it was a big knee he hit him with that put him down and knocked him out. Simply one of his best weapons. He wears guys out in pursuit of the takedown, or simply by, if he can put them on his back, obviously that's an advantage, but even if he can't, clinch and force them to work hard. The negative is when he closes the gap, especially against a power puncher and a guy who can counter like Andrei Arlovski, it puts them in range of getting cracked with one of those power shots. For Barnett to stay on the outside, he's got some weapons too. He'll throw some nice low kicks. He'll even go high with a head kick. Sometimes not always pretty, but it can be effective. He'll go to the body as well. He throws a right jab. He hurt Big Country Roy Nelson with that right hand. He'll throw a good left as well. And I said he likes to punch his way into the clinch, which can be an effective tool when he's trying to work that distance game and then turn into that close range opportunity. In that Nelson fight, it's probably the best he's looked in a long time. He landed 146 significant strikes. That's a big output for a big man. He switched stance in that fight. He went to southpaw, which can open up to the right hand, but again, it gives different fronts that his opponent has to deal with. When he fought Ben Rothwell, though, he didn't look nearly as good. He was getting tagged with some strikes from Rothwell, who was throwing a lot of different things at him. Rothwell's very awkward and very difficult to deal with during exchanges. He didn't have the same output. He seemed hesitant at times to engage with a bigger man that he felt he probably couldn't control along the cage, and of course the bigger man generated a lot of power in those punches. And the other thing with Barnett is he's shown some cracks in his defensive grappling. He was taken down 4 times by Roy Nelson in that fight, as he was shockingly submitted by Ben Rothwell. The first time he's actually been submitted to something other than punches. There's a chance Andrei Arlovski could look to exploit that, go offensive with his grappling. I don't expect him to do that, but you never know. Arlovski certainly has the power to hurt Barnett, but how confident is he coming into this fight after getting knocked out in back-to-back matchups? We saw him really struggle when the knockouts started to pile up earlier in his career. I think we could be headed back to something like that. Overall, Andrei needs to remain very active. Keep attacking. Don't allow Barnett to get comfortable and dictate the pace. But unfortunately for Andrei, that's not his style. He can attack in bursts, but he tends to let his opponent, kind of stick around and do his own thing. And Andrei, I don't think he has the gas tank anymore to really pile up those punches and really maintain a heavy, heavy pace. We saw him come out very aggressive against against Overeem, but he wasn't able to continue that high pressure attack early on. Look for Barnett to close the distance, kind of use that predictability of Andrei with his style of, pawing and throwing the right hand. as a way to get in around that, close the distance, look for takedowns, clinch up, dirty box, attack Andrei in close. The way I look at this fight, either Barnett's going to outwork him with those short-range strikes and tire him out in the clinch, or with takedowns, combination of the two, or hurt him with something, whether it be at distance, in the transition in between, or on the inside. And eventually, my prediction is Josh Barnett to defeat Andrei Arlovski by TKO. So as always, those are my 4 main card predictions for UFC Fight Night 93, which will take place in Hamburg, Germany this Saturday. With heavyweights, you never know, because all it takes is one punch to change the course of a fight, or as was the case with Rothwell versus Barnett, one ill-timed takedown attempt followed by a Herculean squeeze to end that matchup. All my preliminary predictions will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. They'll probably be a little shorter this time around because I want to make sure I get to the bet packs with plenty of time to break the fights down, to give you a little bit more time, knowing the fights start a little bit earlier on Saturday. Again, $10 for the bet packs. I'm shaving $2 off simply because we got screwed in the Lozon Miller fight. Again, don't cry foul. I know it could have gone either way. I just felt our fighter Joe Lozon did enough to win that matchup, and it cost us some money. So it cost me a lot of money, and nonetheless, I'm going to shave a couple bucks off. As it's really not much, but again, it's just saying, hey, I recognize we got screwed. We should have won. We didn't. Follow me at KO_predictions on Twitter. As always, check me out on Facebook as well. Head over to the website. The polls won't be up quite yet for what's the next one, UFC 203. Looking forward to that. Should be a lot of good action. We have a lot of continuous week in, week out fights coming up, so I got a lot of work to do. Talk to you soon, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.